Turns out he's a major cinephile. They don't watch enough movies! It's a very simple formula! And here we go. Welcome to Nick Nack Goes to the Movies, now with new weekly episodes coming out every Monday instead of Friday. Why not change it up? Instead of kicking off the weekend with your pop culture punch, why stop there? Instead, let's start the whole week off and think bigger. Bring you all the movie magic and TV tirades you could want. Last week was also our 50th episode, so to all you loyal listeners out there, thank you for continuing to be on this cinematic cruise since the start of COVID. So what better way to celebrate the past 50 by taking something old and something new, diving first into the 1996 classic from my childhood, Space Jam, before seeing how the new school can kick it in Space Jam: A New Legacy, which is still available on HBO Max until a very special date, August 16th. And yes, you can have an entire Space Jam marathon all on HBO Max. So, while we may never know definitively who would win one-on-one between Michael Jordan and LeBron James, we can definitely now answer which NBA superstar has the better animated Looney Tunes crossover film. So everybody get up, it's time to slam now. We got a real jam going down. Welcome to the Space Jam. Here's your chance, do your dance at the Space Jam. Alright. So, Space Jam from 1996. Before we begin, this movie is a childhood classic. It's iconic and a movie that should never have been made, but thank goodness someone decided to make the most popular basketball player of all time play basketball with some of the most iconic cartoon characters of all time that aren't Disney-based. But take those things away, and you still have Larry Bird, Charles Barkley, Danny Ainge, Jim Rome, and so many other huge basketball personalities. But even if you take them out of it, you still have Wayne Knight, Nedry for you Jurassic Park people, and Danny DeVito. But even more importantly, something Space Jam: A New Legacy can never compete with. The OG Space Jam has the comedic genius that is Bill Murray. He ain't afraid of no ghosts, and he ain't afraid of the Monstars either. And boy oh boy, I can't wait to see his new film, well, the film he's in, Ghostbusters Afterlife, coming out November 11th. So this whole soundtrack is still amazing. It is one of the first CDs outside of Baha Men Who Let the Dogs Out that I owned. You know, those were small circles about the size of a PS5 disc that played anywhere from maybe 10 to 15 songs from one album that you put in either a slightly bigger circle with headphones called a Walkman. Those were mostly over-the-ear headphones, or on-the-ear, not really over at that point. Or you'd put it in a bigger, semi-cylindrical shape that ran on a handful of AA batteries or was wall plugged in, called a boombox. This has been your yearly blast from the past. This soundtrack really does have it all, from Seal, Salt and Pepper, and of course, the amazing combo of Busta Rhymes, Coolio, LL Cool J, and Method Man. And it has some great music in the first song being Fly Like an Eagle. If nothing else, and there really should be some fine points here, Space Jam ties a narrative around the life of Michael Jordan, and while obviously taking some fictional liberties with his departure from basketball after his father's passing to take up his sport of baseball and eventually return to the NBA. The Monstars / Toon Squad storyline fits in rather nicely. If you have somehow not watched the Final Dance ESPN documentary, please do yourself a favor, watch all of the parts, either on Netflix or ESPN Plus. Just do it. You will not be disappointed. So look, some of the animation of this movie is not good. The blending of live action and 3D and a more standard animation, it doesn't always work. Look, even the plot is not so good. Space aliens ran by Dan DeVito want to make their bad theme park better, and they're going to kidnap the Looney Tunes unless they can beat them in a basketball game. Hijinks ensue. It's barely making sense, but watching it and me rereading a generic plot description summary are two very different things. Seeing the doc, or if you just lived and experienced all the Michael Jordan phenomenon, this movie doesn't feel so off. A ton of people are just rooting for him to succeed, and just want to see and be near him, no matter what sport he was playing and all the lines of him signing things for everyone. You gotta love it. I was never a huge Looney Tunes fan overall. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it and watched it, but I don't know if I would call myself a huge fan. But yeah, you can't help but love them all. My favorite, personally, will always be Yosemite Sam. I like Marvin the Martian too, but he really doesn't get a whole lot to do in this movie besides being relegated to a ref. They never really give Marvin the Martian his due, unfortunately. The setup of the theme park may be silly, but the basketball challenge leads to seeing some of the NBA players in a time when the league was just stuffed with talent. Sadly, Magic Johnson is not here, and if he is somewhere, I haven't seen him, and I swear I looked at IMDb and checked everywhere. I couldn't find him in this movie. I don't think he's in here. But we got Patrick Ewing and Charles Barkley and more make up for it. It also would have been amazing to see Scottie Pippen, but we got a lot out of this after all. So I guess, we can't be holding it against Space Jam too much, but a few more players, like the entirety of the Dream Team, maybe minus Christian Laettner, would have been sensational. Also, somehow Shaq being not a part of any of these movies, one or two, is a travesty to say the least. Not sure what movie added the idea of multiple kids dressing up as one adult in a trench coat. I don't know when that became a thing. But this movie has it. And boy, using the 5 aliens as one adult, hilarious. Maybe not as good as the BoJack Horseman one. Classic Vincent adult man antics, like business and transactions. I did have to rewatch a whole supercut of Vincent adult man in action when watching this. Like many things, watching this movie post the first pandemic in many people's lifetimes, there is something wild about watching this movie and seeing the season canceled with a mysterious sickness in this movie. It just hits home after all the trouble sports continue to be with COVID, with the Olympics and more. Kind of like watching The Strain and seeing a pandemic in a movie. It just feels different. Also, I know the new movie is a bit of a corporate thing. We'll get into more of that later on. But they do have this line that lists all of Michael's sponsors to try to motivate him to get out. And it feels less like that and more like a fun joke nod. I don't feel nearly as strongly that solicitations are being thrown in my face. I wish they could have had magic in this movie. I know I talk about it a few times, but I'm going to keep saying it probably. Especially with a scene taking place with the Lakers at the Forum with gas masks and a pretty good joke scene. Sad that he wasn't a part of that. But it's super fun seeing Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, and Bill Murray play golf and just hang out. And the Looney Tunes using his other love, not baseball, not basketball, but golf to drag him into Looney Tunes world through a golf hole after a hole-in-one. I mean, simply amazing. I also love that they never decide to animate MJ, and instead they let him exist in this Toon world and not be necessarily ingrained as a part of it. If there's one scene I always remember from this movie, it has to be the part with Charles Barkley existing and wanting to join the neighborhood game after his talent is stolen, and the sad rendition of Basketball Jones. Somehow it always gets me. It's like those commercials of playing ball and inspiring the youth, but gone horribly wrong. Brutal for Barkley. Also, fun Disney jab thrown in this movie about naming a team the Ducks and asking what Mickey Mouse organization would name them that. Iconic and so good. What a Mighty Ducks Disney reference overall. This movie is loaded with other characters and in this organization from the Looney Tune world with deep cuts and favorites alike from this universe. And arguably, that's the most important part of a Looney Tunes movie. Look, this is a love letter to these characters and an amazing era of basketball. It's not a long movie, and it doesn't have to be. It's the perfect length, and honestly, the small-scale story is a fun delight to watch. And pretty quickly, it gets us to the basketball game. The refereeing is terrible in this game, and the fouls are atrocious, which is unfortunately to blame Marvin the Martian, who somehow is a unbiased ref or just barely is a ref. I don't know. But this movie is still super fun in the game part of it. I mean, if you don't think about the basketball parts too hard, I mean, they play fun with both angles. Michael being quadruple team, callbacks to the movie setup. Heck, Yosemite Sam is covering one of the monsters at gunpoint. Wild stuff on the court. Also, thankfully, they do give some Toons a chance to score, even when they're just doing the basketball part in the first half. Lola Bunny is the second best player on the team, obvi. But even that can help the scoreline. 18 to kind of one-sided, isn't it? I always think of the battles getting one-sided from the original Pokemon Stadium game on the N64. Hopefully my dad gets a kick out of that, because he loved that when they said that on the game. I mean, the biggest plot point is a placebo for Michael's stuff. Mixed messaging, but still another lovely part of this movie that leads to some amazing Toon antics somehow tied into basketball. I mean, the Pulp Fiction reference with Yosemite Sam and Elmer Fudd is beautiful, and almost everyone gets a chance to shine with Sylvester, Daffy, Bugs, Taz, Wiley, Tweety, and more all getting on the fun. I don't know if Grandma gets a whole lot of action in this movie, unfortunately. And look, I'll say this too, when I think of deep MJ cuts and things that really make it feel like it's a movie about him in Looney Tunes. Like after the 30 for 30, there's a fun note that you pick up on of Michael Jordan loving to gamble. And it's just that thing is wedged in this movie too. It really feels like it really took a lot of who Michael is and put it into this movie with a bunch of cartoons running around. I mean, there may be no end to the on-court violence that does happen around like 2/3 into the basketball game. I mean, seeing Foghorn Leghorn as a cooked chicken while on a blood bag is pretty funny. But nothing could prepare you for a surprise Bill Murray showing up and having Dan DeVito's alien business guy like horribly label him. I didn't know Dan Aykroyd was in this film. Too good. I mean, people forget Bill Murray was the reason that Toon Squad won with his game-winning assist. And that, of course, stretchy arm Michael Jordan scoring from half court for a nail-biting 78-77. It's a lovely end of the pros getting their talent back, Michael suiting up back for the Bulls once again, and it does some great things that semi-tie back into the real-life story of MJ. And while we never got Magic, a true shame, it is fun seeing Larry Bird back, even if he never balls out, chilling with Bill Murray, who just lived out his basketball dream, dishing Michael Jordan a game-winning assist and still thinks he could have been in the NBA, which probably, right? Look, this movie is not amazing, but man, is it so much fun, and I will always love this film. Always. So when we talk about Space Jam: A New Legacy, which just came out, I mean, it was supposed to release early, but it is a 2021 film. Even before watching the sequel, when it was first announced, I was excited overall. You kind of knew it was going to be LeBron, but then that first trailer hit, and I was super nervous with what even this movie was. I mean, with it not being possible, sadly, for Kobe to be a part of this, I mean, another reason 2020 really sucked for a plethora of reasons. The only person who could be in this as a lead had to be LeBron James. Also, LeBron James, if you're listening, hello. Thank you for joining the show, but please can you and your production company make another Friday the 13th movie? I need something ASAP. It has been ages since that 2009 Just Okay film came out, and maybe you can find a way to get more DLC like the Grendel, Jason X space stuff into the Friday the 13th video game, especially if it's on the Switch. That would be delightful to have. Okay, short horror plead over. So Don Cheadle is in this, and yes, I do like him. Who doesn't? Walking Dead alum Sonequa Martin Green joins the cast of non-basketball players. They actually did get another Walking Dead alum, Stephen Yeun, Lil Rel Howery, who you may remember from the other basketball movie, Uncle Drew, which of course has Nick Kroll, and more. I mean, the big disgust ad was Zendaya being cast as the voice of Lola Bunny, who was actually introduced in the first Space Jam as the Toons character. Her character existed only because of that movie to start. The basketball cast exists here, right? Anthony Davis, super fun with them being teammates now. Damian Lillard and Klay Thompson. This movie also gets some WNBA players in Nika Ogwumike and Diana Taurasi. They also have a few more basketball cameos in Sue Bird and Draymond Green. There are more names I will get into, but want to not spoil too much of the surprises this early on, and overall, spoilers aplenty for a new movie, obviously. Also, unrelated, and I'll say this probably more than once, I don't care if it's a kid's movie or not. Good Disney movies are also made for kids, so don't use that as a crutch. Look, the Clone Wars animated shows were not just made for adults or kids, they were just made, and they were good. Star Wars Resistance is clearly just made for kids, or you could just say it's bad. Same thing. clearly there's good animated Star Wars things in the Clone Wars, the Bad Batch, and Rebels. And this one that I think trying to tailor something to kids sometimes is just a cop-out for saying we can get away with bad writing. And, look, kids don't deserve that too. Kids should be able to watch good things. Just what it is. So don't use that as a crutch. This movie does have some good tries to be the same as the original Jam, with a parent-to-kid flashback talk, and they do go all out with some early Looney Tunes references. I can appreciate the attempt to give young LeBron an early lesson in losing focus, being bad, and vilifying video games, which obviously I would never do. Video games are dope. And this is used as a detriment to his sport performance. And, I'm going to probably go on a bit of a downward hit with this movie. But look, not all 90s movies are good. But there is some fun with the music, no doubt. And yeah, the modern music will never feel as good. Ever. I don't know. Sometimes there's good modern music, obviously, but these two movie soundtracks, this does not hold a candle to that movie. Also, like the first Space Jam, somehow missing out on having, or not having, Dwayne Wade or Bosh or any other main LeBron teammates, especially because the Anthony Davis part, it's not the real Anthony Davis, it's just some character, there's a missed opportunity. True travesty. It's also a bit weird that LeBron is kind of vilified here. I know his legacy is always going to be up and down, and it's not basketball purist and all that stuff. But this is something they would never do to Jordan. It tries to add depth to the story, sure, but this is a weird take. Also, what is this weird, digital server version of Don Cheadle and, trying to split up the word algorithm to make Ali G rhythm? I mean, good gosh. That's bad. That's super bad. And I guess he's the, whole creative artificial intelligence version for Warner Brothers / HBO Max. It's a villain computer program wanting to be seen. And, Therapy Nick appreciates wanting to be seen. It is weird as all get up, though. It honestly really doesn't make sense. Both LeBron James kid mention, and I don't know if that was intentional, but there's no way it wasn't. That's pretty funny. That little moment was pretty funny. When they get past trying to make LeBron a barely villain a few times, and they want to make him redeemable later, he's pretty fun when he's not in that parent villain role, in air quotes villain. It's just so strange overall. But I do love when he's talking about, his dad humor. It says, did you say dad, dab, dad, dab? That's pretty good, again. Also, animated, seeing LeBron James in Game of Thrones, Batman, Harry Potter, it's pretty fun for the hot second moments. And music purist of movie soundtracks, gotta love 90s Batman, orchestrally thrown in there, super fun to boot. Look, there are some fun references. Seeing LeBron's fall outline being a Nike swoosh is pretty funny. I do think some of the jokes just don't land, and the setup of having to tour all over these WB properties to find the tunes scattered all over the place is a bit exhausting. Also, unrelated, this movie is way too long, being at almost 2 hours. I do like that Marvin Martian is immediately available and used, because of course he got super misused in the first one, but his whole thing is a bit, and somehow they never want to give love to Marvin the Martian. I don't understand how or why, but always getting the short end of the stick. Also, the majority of references to LeBron leaving teams constantly is super funny and tongue-in-cheek, as is the mention of family being everything. I mean, not sure if it was purposeful, and sadly, Fast and Furious is a Universal property, so Dominic Toretto and his crew can't drive in from space to take part in this movie. Absolutely brutal tease to family. Yes, the franchise has the monopoly on using the word family, fast cars, and Corona, non-negotiable. So the cartoon rendering of putting LeBron in everything in the beginning was fun and quirky, but this whole movie is just running around through WB things and finding Looney Tunes in there, which is strange, really strange. I enjoyed it a bit the first time with animated Justice League, seemingly every Batman theme you could ever want from the 60s to the 90s, and it's cool, but the whole thing is all over the place. I don't mean to be the villain LeBron James parent part, but this franchise should be loony and basketball-y, and at times seeing them run through random places like Mad Max World with random tunes is a lot. Also, what kid, if this is a kid's movie, what kid is going to be about Mad Max. I mean, this is a disservice for Casablanca, a movie I truly love and one of my favorite oldies movies. And the team assembling is just a lot going on in short order. Kind of, we talk about this, movies that have just too much going on, like the Annabelle Comes Home movie. And there's just so many movies where just things fly at you a mile a minute, and this is another one of those. But yes, I did enjoy the brief, albeit censored, Rick and Morty cameo. I dislike the Game of Thrones Leghorn, and like they just do some weird stuff with the Matrix and Looney Tunes, and this weird humor that I'll get into with Granny's character. That's her name, Granny. I mean, this movie starts off with saying just how bad of an idea throwing all these pop culture things with LeBron. And yeah, throwing all these pop culture things with Looney Tunes is still a bad idea. Almost halfway through it, and I'm still pretty over this. I mean, you knew where Lola Bunny was. You knew she was going to be with the Amazons and Wonder Woman. And while that's a fun thing, and I love Rosario Dawson as that voice, it would have been great if they could have got Gal Gadot. But, you know, the animation style they went with for Wonder Woman is super weird. It's like a digital comic book thing. It just looks very bad. Very bad. Thankfully, you know, this movie doesn't dissuade too much from the notion that Lola is still the second best basketball player in these movies. Thankfully, they still kept that afloat. The way they get all the basketball players in this game is also rough. Like, they have their live action cameo. I mean, that's what all it is a cameo. It's not good. I mean, they just exist, and they're at this all-star thing in the crowd, and LeBron's son gets to get LeBron's son privileges and take camera capture video player analytic things, and that's how he does. I mean, this whole crowd would no way would be cool with pausing that and just seeing random drills happen for this kid. Like, the basketball story in Space Jam: A New Legacy really feels like it just doesn't exist. Also, did these Toon players kind of forget they did it already? Seemingly, almost everyone has amnesia, having to learn basketball again. They won this whole thing once. I mean, Lola and Bugs make brief references to the first movie existing and Michael Jordan existing at a point, but for the most part, this is super retread territory. Some jokes are pretty funny. Yosemite Sam shoots the ball, and literally doing it is objectively funny. And speaking of fun, I guess this is the big moral of the story. You know, basketball should be fun, and LeBron needs to learn that. But, like, he's normally, seemingly, a very personable and fun person. So the narrative feels, like, super false and wrong in the sense where Michael Jordan's actor version still felt like it was Michael Jordan, where LeBron only moderately feels like it's him until, like, the very end. Making players who are super unimportant to the movie animal people is also just strange. A weird way to change from Goon Squad to Toon Squad and Monstars and all the differentials and how to make it a thing. Just that they really did something weird there. The build-up is hit or miss at best, but there are some moments. But having an entire hour of this movie dedicated to the basketball game, unexpected to say the least. And like the trailers before, there is a explosion of IPs from this Warner Brothers. I mean, characters from WB look pretty good in 3D animation. The upgrade to the Looney Tunes looked good, I thought. But just having every character ever, from the Flintstones, Scooby-Doo, Iron Giant, Kong, Pennywise, the Strange Gang from Clockwork Orange. I mean, having all these sideline characters just to watch basketball from all walks of life, it's just too weird. And like, none of them are there. They just look the way. They're just random people making cheers, and there's no like characterization from all these IPs. They just exist as eye candy, and they don't have personalities. Like, there's parts where the Matrix agents who are supposed to be cold and calculating are like cheering like idiots. It didn't make any sense. I'm mad thinking about it again. Oh my goodness. I do like Ernie Johnson existing overall and announcing this. It's a super fun, deep cut for basketball. But that's about it. After that, like, they're calling the game like, I don't even know what I'm watching. Same. 100% same, Ernie Johnson. I mean, this whole thing is a weird remix of basketball, and I absolutely hate it. The Goon Squad that exists is also not very good. And their song is also not good. It's no way going to compare it to the Monstar song, which was a hip-hop collaboration explosion of amazingness. I mean, I don't like this movie. The jokes that are good are far and few in between, but this movie is not my thing. I do have to say, I do like them new jerseys. They are styling, that is for sure. And in all honesty, that might be the issue with this movie. All style and little to no substance. And that, I guess, is the whole point somehow. I mean, the score almost made sense in the first one. But here, things are happening left and right, and the score is, like, insane. Dare I say stupid. I hate this, air quote, basketball that's taking place in this movie so much. Now, the one fun cameo of the original Monstars is nice, but it pales in comparison to the joke of finding Michael Jordan in the audience. I mean, amazing. And I get it, we couldn't find Michael A. Jordan, so Michael B. Jordan. That was a pretty stellar joke. I enjoyed the heck out of that one. I mean, I wish they could have had the real Michael Jordan, or at least Bill Murray. I swore I was in the trailer too. When I saw coming from a mile away, the garbage rap scene with Notorious P.I.G. I knew this movie was bad when I saw that. And, like, if this movie's made for kids, all the references in this movie, there's not things made for kids. I'm sure kids really appreciate. I don't know if that nun was supposed to be the nun that gave me, like, some clear, deep fears for my Conjuring rewatch. Kids definitely don't know about Casablanca. I would hope kids don't know about Pennywise yet. I mean, maybe the Tim Curry version, but not the Stellan Skarsgård one. You know, and having even a brief reference to A Clockwork Orange. And there was this whole talk about a Pepe Le Pew consent scene that sounded like it was going to be moderately educational and interesting. They didn't have that, but there's a whole Clockwork Orange gang that's all about the lack of consent in that movie. Like, what are we doing here? That's probably not for kids, like Sneaking Suspicion. So it definitely can't be a cop-out saying this movie's made for kids when you got things like that in there. I do have to mention a few good moments here. LeBron signaling Taz to do the spin thing saying, is pretty funny. There is this, I think, an issue that I have with movies a lot, especially movies that are tailored toward kids. And it's this weird humor. I can't quantify it. I've never been able to say what it actually is. So instead, I'll describe it. It's the same kind of joke as Porky rapping. And it's super apparent with Granny being old and doing, like, wild breakdancing moves on her walker. Like, the same thing as putting her in The Matrix, which is a movie I love and I do not like desecrated by this movie. And while she never got to play in the first game, really, it's nice for the character to see court action. Like I said, maybe this is humor for kids. Like, I don't know, but I still am going to hold firm in saying Disney makes movies for kids that are good and funny. So no excuses for this new tarnished legacy of a classic. I swear I'm not too old and going to tell people to get off my lawn. While there may not be any D-Wade in this movie, the brief reference to the iconic signature photo of LeBron dunking and Dwayne Wade with his arms out, like, even that brief reference is pretty solid. The eventual reconciliation of LeBron and his son is really nice. It feels unearned, and it takes ages for LeBron to be the nice dad again. And it really is nice. But, like, he has all this fun and all that happens before he even thinks about his son, or at least that's what the movie makes it look like. So it's all a bit tone confused. Also, LeBron getting posterized and the tunes being up for a bit is pretty wild. It's nice that eventually LeBron and his son teams up. And having Granny being the one who knit it, that's a nice touch to her character. I like that more than her going old school on him. It's cringy thinking about it. You know, I will say there is something ironic about his son also switching teams. No way was that joke made in there, like, but unintentionally, I can't not think of that. Ah, well, as the College Humor version of this exists, where he switches teams at halftime to join the Monstars, peak internet humor. So yeah, the winner is not unexpected, but there are some clear problems about this soulless version of something that used to be super fun. A thing that the movie is all about. Oh, let's make it fun. Well, this movie was not fun. And I find the lack of Bill Murray disturbing. I don't know. They try to make a nice family story, you know, with things like being yourself, which sounds good, but so much going on and messing with the fundamental franchise structure too much. It's a true travesty. And the idea of Bugs even for a second being deleted is laughable for a fake, tearful moment that this movie could make you think there was going to be a chance he was gone forever. I mean, I got that emotional burst fake out moment in the first Pokemon movie in theaters when Ash was turned to stone. That for sure got me in the Mewtwo Mew one. But come on. Of course Bugs was fine. I guess you could say, well, come on. Of course Ash is fine. But Pikachu crying was a heartfelt emotional stakes for young Nick when I saw that in theaters. There was a nice moment, at least at the end, of LeBron taking his son to E3 game design camp instead of basketball camp as a fun surprise. And he's all happy, and he's like, hey, I'll take the ball back. He said, no, I think I'll keep it. And maybe his son is going to become a video game person and a basketball person. He can have the best of both worlds, right? Like the Miley Cyrus, "The best of both worlds" song. Like, all of this is a nice little moment, but it all feels a bit unearned. It's nice, but this movie is a piece of work. So I'll do the rankings list for posterity's sake. You already know what it is. If the 2 of 2, Space Jam: A New Legacy, and of course the number 1 is Space Jam, posterity's sake more than anything. Shortest list I've done. So I really took my time making this episode, partly because I was scared to finally watch what A New Legacy actually was. No way was I going to watch this in theaters, so I had to get to it before it was gone on HBO Max. But this was easily a movie that was, I knew, no doubt, going to be an HBO Max stream for me. And it was an absolute delight to go back to the first Space Jam, which I own on DVD, so it's fine no matter what, but just kind of having a clear reason to watch it again is still so good. Not a cinematic masterpiece, but it really is still fun. Honestly, I feel bad for LeBron that his Space Jam will super pale in comparison to the original. There were hints at a good story wedged into the sequel, but there was so much nonsense clogging it up. I would have been cool with the idea of LeBron learning to be a supportive dad outside of the basketball world and, this notion of being true to yourself. But the basketball angle needs to be part of this franchise. Instead, we got this WB Frankenstein monster. So yeah, that's the episode. And if you can spin the sequel differently, please let me know on social, either knickknack_IC or knickknackmovies on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Letterboxd, where you can check out my ratings for both these movies. It will not surprise you how I spread these two out. I don't know if I was too harsh to New Legacy, but time will tell if I soften my stance on it. Well, cheers, and until next time, cinephiles. Are you not entertained? I think this is gonna be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I don't like goodbyes. Let's just call this see you later, Alex.